a fun little book that I stumbled upon while visiting my library. Libraries are really great places to discover unintentional inspiration. So, the book I'm going to be sharing with you guys today is On the Bus with Rosa Parks. And this is a collection of poems by Rita Dove. And she is phenomenal writer. And to be quite honest, she is a style that I have yet to come into contact with. So when you're thinking about trying to challenge your writing or draw some new inspiration, there's nothing better than reading something that you have not come across yet, a style, structure, whatever it is. She's a poet laureate, and so I thought it'd be super fun to read one of her poems. There's a section in this book, and this book's kind of organized like oh gosh, what do you call it? Almost like a textbook, really. They're all divided into sections. So there's one that's called Freedom, Bird's Eye View. There's one that's called Black on a Saturday Night. There's one that's called Revenant. And then, of course, On the Bus with Rosa Parks. And within those sections are a collection of poems. So within the Bird's Eye View Freedom section, we have the poem called The First Book. So here we go. Open it. Go ahead. It won't bite. Well, maybe a little. More nip, like a tingle. It's pleasurable, really. You see, it keeps on opening. You may fall in. Sure, it's hard to get started. Remember, learning to use knife and a fork. Dig in. You'll never reach bottom. It's not like it's the end of the world. Just the world as you think. You know it. Okay, so some of the pieces in this poem kind of settle into my style a little bit, but the uh, meter of this poem is slightly different, which is why I appreciate this so much. So, one place that I definitely picked up on this, and you can't quite see it in the text, is the very last line when, and this starts with a capital, it's not like it's the end of the world, and then there's a dash or a pause. And instead of capitalizing the J on the word just to re emphasize or say this is a new thought, it just keeps going with a lowercase j in the word just. So just the world as you think, and then it drops a couple lines down. And again, no capitalization on the word you. It just says you know it. And there's something really freeform yet very connected with this type of structure of writing. And when I was reading it aloud that first time, it was so natural to do it that way. There's such a personality that can come out when the lines are written separate, but the structure lends itself for it to be connected. And I hope that makes sense. I think for some of these videos, I ought to get a little screen. You can connect it into the laptop, and then you can see the text. You stick it under. So I do have one. So I think it might be a fun little additive because a lot of the times you have to just go off of my word. So, but the other thing that I wanted to mention in this is the concept of reading your first book that you truly love. A lot of the times we don't get to hear the conversation of people learning to fall in love with reading. It's always, I'm forced to read this, I'm forced to read that. And you hear this a lot in uh, any type of formal written analysis, uh, biographies. People either love or they hate reading. But nobody ever talks about that kind of beginning phase when that shifts. And what a powerful moment that can be. And I really like that we go for much more directive language. It's more of a nip, like a little tingle, and that it's really actually quite fun and but unexpected. And I think that the author themselves articulate this feeling of unfamiliarity when they're saying it won't bite. Well, maybe a little. Maybe it's more like a nip, a tingle. There's this weird relationship that one has, especially like for myself, avid love bookworm reader, where you find that first book that kind of sets you on the path to bookworm. And it's one of those books I remember I would read the same page over and over again to really digest and understand. So while you're digesting and literally, and she's used this as a type of language to kind of personify the act of reading, you're having to take big spoonfuls of these books that are probably well written. And so you're having to reread, or you're just really having to understand what's going on in the plot, whatever the reason is. But you have kind of like this multi course meal when it comes to reading your first great book. And so I like that she kind of says, "Oh, it might hurt a little bit. Oh, not so much. It's actually really good once you finish." It's such a fun way to write. Um, and then she really dives in deep with this concept of things keep on opening. You might fall into the world of the book. You get lost in books. And then you're going to get lost in another one and another one and another one. Because a lot of things that readers I don't think talk about is the way that temporality moves. When you're reading a story, you are experiencing that story along with the characters. And we talk about this a lot in when I was studying literature, is that author knows and tries to always keep in mind that relationship between story and reader and playing upon words and plot to impact all knowing how the reader might interpret something or not interpret something. And so it's always really fun to have, especially in a poem, have that relationship with reading, the art of falling in love with reading, and then that inevitable drop of, well, the book's over. I got to read another one and another one and another one and another one. It's always fun to hear people articulate different um, experiences when it comes to the concept of reading. So, um, and then of course we get that imagery with the knife and fork. I mean, you didn't just pick up a knife and a fork when you were a little kid. You had to practice and practice. And she really calls to that while it's a fun, enjoyable, like 5-star course meal, it's still, a lofty goal. When you're reading the books that you want to read, you have to have some skill. And I think the special thing that she definitely calls to is a woman of color, um, literature, access to reading, at some point wasn't always accessible. And the power of language and the power of communication and what that meant for people of color um, all throughout history, and the power that um, that unlocks is very huge for marginalized groups. And so this isn't just, a passion project within this poem. This is definitely a preach to all marginalized groups that the power of the book is um, it's not just the end of the world. You're a reality. It's just the world as you think you know it. It opens your eyes to how you may be being oppressed in ways that you may not have noticed. Um, I think that one of the things I can say personally for this is when I was studying a lot of the uh, literature internationally, this bodes especially true. learning about other people's experiences, uh, many, many great intellects, and their work that they did and their literary analysis of their reality of the time is very impressionable. And so I can only imagine for the actual group themselves to feel a strong sense of belonging. And so there's so much that's going on when we're talking about this concept of the first book. And for people like Rita Dove, the impact can be lasting. As you see, she's a poet laureate. And so, and as I mentioned before, think some of the fun things that happen when you're an avid reader and a writer is the work's never really done. You're always gonna want to read something new, something more challenging, something different, and it's all just for the joy and the love of reading. So I chose this, of course, because the theme is such a bias to my own heart, because I'm such an avid reader. Um, but yeah, this poem's short, it's sweet, and that's kind of the fun that I like about it. I think if I were to use this, it could be like day one, first day of school. That would be, I think, a real huge hook for kids, especially because it is a little bit more simply written, it is short, and you could dive in and do practically anything with it. And I think that that lends itself to the flexibility of using poetry as your guiding anchor text in a lot of English classes or ELA classes. So, Rita Dove, amazing poet. I could probably blither on a lot about her and her amazing way she articulates her life and her history, and not just talking about themes of reading and um, love and all these other types of amazing, powerful topics, but use it. Check it out. It's awesome. There's other books by her as well, but this collection of poems I thought was especially cool, so I wanted to share with you guys. So